And hello, everybody. It's another Tuesday, landing right here at How Table Talk. Only this time there's a serious absence of a table. That's because we have our very first special guest. First of all, Pastor KD right here to my left. It's me, Landon Wright. I've already said that, but I like hearing my own voice. And then right over here, we have the very, very successful, very valuable to the church, Brother Curtis Campbell. Brother Curtis, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are y'all?
Oh, we're good, man. We're just glad there's finally more than two guys up here. You know, maybe we'll get some nuggets of wisdom out of you today. Hopefully that's the goal anyway. So anyways, Brother Keith, why don't you give us a quick background on you and Brother Curtis and his being here at the church?
Well, he's just been a blessing. We've been together, like I said, going on 20 years, maybe a little bit more together. And he's always been the financial guy that we lean to for reports, for insights, for wisdom, and to be able to put things together financially to present to the bank. He's done a good job. He's been a blessing. He's been a big friend and a pal and a buddy, and just a great, great guy. And I love him. He's always been real special to me as a person, not just as a pastor, but as a friend. So he does a great job, and I believe today we can glean from some things that he says, and I believe if we'll apply them, they'll help us out financially.
What do you think of that introduction, huh? It's a pretty good one.
I don't know if I could even top that. But sometimes you stretch it a little bit, and he might have been stretching a little bit.
Just a tad. Well, Brother Curtis, why don't you tell us, how did you get a background on finance? Was there any school involved and just a lot of experience? What went into that?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Pastor Keith for inviting me to join y'all today. I don't know if he's going to be so thankful when we're done. But I thank him for inviting me here, and there's really I have no education in finances. I started in a church with about 25 people, 3 checks and a scratch pad, wondering who we're going to pay, if we even had enough checks to pay them.
Yeah.
What bills are we going to pay? And then as the church grew, we got, the program QuickBooks, and I really just basically taught myself on it.
Well, that is very impressive when you're starting at, not just the bottom, but like the emergency bottom, like barely even enough to get going. And coming out of that hole, you're of course going to pick up some things. So, Brother Curtis, I put together 3 or 4 really good questions here that I think can really apply to a lot of people out there, not just in Central Louisiana, but really wherever they may be watching this. So, the first question is, a lot of people find themselves in debt these days. Right now, the cost of living these days it's always just growing and growing. I don't think we're ever really going to see it calm down anytime soon. And now with the pandemic and all that shifting in at the beginning of this year, it's just a weird time. But all that aside, what's some of the big reasons that people find themselves in debt, maybe as an individual or as a small organization or something like that?
And don't look at me when you talk about that.
No, really, the main reason most people are in debt is because they want things they can't afford. You have that small percentage out there that something comes up in their life, they have financial struggles due to maybe a job change or losing their job and having to start over again. Of course, once we lose our jobs and start over again, it'd be nice if our debt started over again, but our debt doesn't start over again. So, but the main reason is people just want things they can't afford. Things like maybe we all know we need vehicles to get around and travel, but we might be a Honda Civic person trying to drive a Cadillac.
Oh, yeah.
We pick the bigger, better, faster, and things that we can't afford. So that's really the main reason most people are on debt, especially a lot of young people today. They look at their parents and see what all their parents have. I know Brother Keith and I have talked about this a few times. They see all the things their parents have, but their parents have been working 40 years to get where they are and to have what they have. And I just want to go out and get my first job making $7.50 an hour, and I want to go buy boats, helicopters, and everything else. I want what my parents got. I don't want to pay the price they paid to get it, though.
Absolutely, you know, and I think that some of that comes from, you know, the kid grows up around all that nice stuff, and they just kind of get acclimated to the point where they feel like that's just how life is supposed to be, you know. And so, I know, like for example, when I went to college, I kind of got it a little bit to where I knew, like, you know, hey, you can live off of great value brand groceries. You don't have to get the Kraft and the Peter Pan peanut butter. You can get the Value Time, and you know, it may not be the best taste, but it's not terrible, you know. So I kind of knew how to adjust and move on. But I had roommates at certain times that were just like, you know, they wanted everything to be like exactly like it was at home, and they could afford it, but like, you know, is it really worth it? I mean, like, because now you got just enough to kind of survive. If something fun comes up, even something cheap, like going to see a movie with some friends or a date with a girl or something, you're strapped, man, because you had to get the Tyson chicken nuggets. You couldn't get the Walmart brand, you know. So I understand that, absolutely. You said young people, I kind of had to put my head down. I was like, here it comes. Yeah, here it is. Well, anyways, question number 2 is, you know, a lot of people, you know, everyone will tell you this, every book will say it, but budgeting. But when we make a budget, you know, a lot of people say it like it's super easy. Well, just budget. Just make a budget. Well, you know, especially in this day and age, there's a lot of things now that are considered essential that probably weren't considered essential or even existed like 10, 20, 30 years ago. For example, TV is starting to get phased out, and now more and more people are going with streaming services. Cell phones, I'm sure you can remember a day before cell phones, and when cell phones first got here, they were a luxury. They were something you just had if you could afford it. Well, now if you try to operate without a cell phone, I mean, you're in a bind because landlines are getting phased out. So when you're creating your budget, what's a good strategy when you're doing that? Basically, like, how do you really decide? Is there a set of questions or anything you should ask? Is this really essential? And just kind of walk us through briefly a good strategy for creating a budget.
I don't really know if there's a good strategy per se. I know you can go online and get some things. There are a lot of good budgeting materials out there, like Larry Burkett has some of the best. He's the one that I used most of the time when I used to do a little budget counseling with people. And most of the time, if you get those, it already has your essentials listed on there. But the main thing you're going to have to do is discipline. Most people, I'd say 95% of the people, are not disciplined enough to budget. Because, I mean, you need to take at least a couple of months to sit down and track expenses, or go back and dig through old records to track expenses, because some of those essentials that would be on that list is like fuel for your vehicle and utilities for your home and groceries. So you need to take a month or two and go through all these things. And how much did I spend on fuel for my vehicle in the last 3 months? How much did I spend on groceries in the last 3 months? And get you a good average. And then once you got a good average on all those things that are deemed essential on your budget list, then you got a good starting point. Sitting down and creating a budget is not easy. Most people try to go off memory. They'll get that paper, I spent, I think, about $150 on groceries last month. And when you pull out your receipts and add them up, you spent $450 on groceries. So then you got a big error in your budget already. So you need to spend the time to gather your information, to get good, accurate information to create your budget. And then when you do that, you start, then you got to add up all your income. You got to get all your income right. Your gross incomes, your net income after they take out taxes, insurance, or whatever it is you may have. And then the very next thing that goes on your budget, really before, what goes on your budget first is your total gross income. And then the second thing that goes on your budget is your tithe. I mean, we got to give the Lord what's His. And, it would be nice, or it's easy, God could have asked us for anything. I mean, it all comes from God anyway. Right. Nothing I have, nothing I own that I got on my own. God gave me the ability to do it. God gave me the ability to go to work, the mental capacity to be able to work and earn money. And God could have said, okay, I want y'all to give me 90% and you keep 10% to live on. But the tithe actually means 10%. God wants us to give back 10% of what we earn and keep 90%. And I think that's the better deal.
Oh,
myself,
absolutely.
Keeping the 90%.
I'm saying.
But this I'll promise people out there, because I have lived it in my life for the last 40 years or so. 90% will go a lot further than 100% will go. Once you get God in your life and you're serving the Lord, you're being faithful, you're faithful in your church attendance and you're faithful in your tithe, God just makes things happen that you can't sit down and put on paper and figure out.
And you know, you're saying that, and what I find is that, Brother Curtis, you're saying, you know, get your priorities straight, basically, and put God
Right.
first, and then put you know, that is an essential thing. God is an essential. He's not a non-essential. But I find out that younger people feel like, well, giving is something and budgeting is something that older people do. And so it's something that you do and I do. But now I'm in college, or I just got out of college. We just got married. I don't have to, you know, tithing and giving is what older church people do. That's not what I have to do. But you watch them, how they struggle through life financially. And what destroys a marriage more than anything is communication, a lack thereof. It's sex. Let's just talk about it. And then it is finances. And I find out money destroys people because they don't put God first. They don't put the essentials there. They don't budget correctly. And then as a result, they're overwhelmed. And they dig a hole, and they end up, instead of pulling together to fight the problem, they fight each other, and they blame each other for the money issue.
Right.
Because they've not sat down and said, what is essential, what's important, let's prioritize, and let's work together instead of work against each other.
Right. And unfortunately, what you said is true. It is most of the older people that do the budgeting, when it should be in reverse. If you could learn that at a young age, even if you're in high school and just got a little part-time job, to learn that in your life at an early age and start practicing budgeting in your younger years. I wish I had done it.
Yeah, me too. I wish I'd have known. I mean, I had taken some classes, but I never had no one sit down and really tell me, now this is what you need to do, and the sacrifices made when we're younger needs to be there. It's okay. Delayed gratification's okay, because in life you can't have what you want. You can't have what you want. If you don't have the money, you don't have the jobs, you're limiting what you really can do. And money is, instead of being our slave, money becomes our master, because it owns us. We don't own it. It controls us. We don't control it.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of that is our fault as parents. I mean, we set our kids down sometimes and we talk to them about life things. You mentioned sex a while ago. We'll set them down, maybe talk about the birds and the bees. And I think that's even a small percentage in these days and times. But how many of us, or how many people out there, do you set your kids down when they do get that first job? Say, okay, let's start showing you how to manage some of this. We don't do it.
I agree with that.
Well, you see, my parents attempted that, and I was always just like, I got it, it'll be all right. And they'll just be like, well, I mean, just be careful. Those $3, $4, $5 purchases at the gas station, and grab a Crispito real quick, that adds up. And I'm like, I got like a whole $200 in the bank. I am great. Yeah. And no, yeah, I was not. So, but like, you know, I like what you had said earlier, Brother Curtis, is that's just one thing that I've already learned just from sitting here and talking, is I didn't know that an adequate amount of time to kind of get it planned out was a few months. I was thinking maybe a week or two. You know, you definitely want to think about it and go back and look at receipts and have that hard evidence. But, you know, it's not something, it's not like studying for a test or something. You can't just sit down and pop through it in a few hours at night. It's, so that's great.
And I think, you know, when Brother Curtis sits down and tries to help those that want to get their life financially together, you know, the unexpected things, Brother Curtis, in life, like when something breaks down or something blows up. Most people live from check to check, and there's too much month at the end of the money, and they're not prepared. And I know that they struggle with that. But one of the things, not to beat anyone up, but we have heard through the years. I've been doing this over 30. You're doing it over 35, somewhere in there, maybe 40 years ministry. Is that when people come and say, I just cannot financially tithe, and let's set that aside. I can't financially tithe. That's the biggie, but we're gonna set that aside. But I can't get a grasp on my finances, and we have offered for them to come sit down in confidence with you, just you and them would know their finances, and you would help them free to develop a budget, come up with a plan so that they can go forward. And very few, I'm going to say 10 people in 30 years that I know of who said, I need help, and I'm willing to do the discipline. You opened up with that. I'm willing to do the discipline part of it and allow you to help me, meaning them, to develop a budget. We would rather gripe, complain, and we would rather just continue on than we would to sit down and get help. And everything that I've learned through finances, I've had to have somebody else help me. I didn't know it, but I wasn't so ashamed or so embarrassed or so prideful that I wouldn't sit down and say, I need some help right here.
Yeah, and again, it falls back to you got to be disciplined and you got to be willing to put in the work, and most people aren't willing.
When they come to you and they've started, did they ever follow through, and did they ever come back and tell you, boy, it made a difference in my life, or did they kind of like fizzle out?
I've had one or two maybe, but most of the rest just fizzled out. We spent all the time, did all the work. We went through receipts, got them all set up, and all they had to do was maintain from there out, and they just didn't have the discipline to maintain.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, sadly that happens, and I totally get where the pride could come into play. You don't like especially as I'm only 25, but I can tell you I've already grown up a lot from when I was 21, because I hated being told. I was like, man, this is my life. I'm finally away from home. I get to see what I can do. Quit telling me what to do. Well, could not have been more wrong. So I'm glad I.
And let me just say this, Landon. I always tell my kids and anybody, I would rather look stupid than be stupid, but I'll take it a notch further than to stay stupid. And so if you keep doing the things you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten. And I just think that you got to let go of that and just admit, I just need help. And I know doctors and lawyers who you look at them and you think, well, man, they got it all together, but they struggle in different areas than we do. None of us has it all together, but together we can get it together if we can ask for help.
Yeah, it doesn't matter your income. I'll just mention this. Of course, we don't mention anybody. I did some budget counseling one time with somebody that the husband and wife together made $11,000 a month.
Now, wait a minute. Say that again, because that's important. I want everybody to listen at this. This is important now. What did you do, and how much did they make?
They come and wanted some help with the budgeting, and we sat down and figured everything up. And this couple together made $11,000 a month, and they were struggling financially. And when you do all the work to get all that stuff together, it really shows you where you're spending money in excess that should not be maybe spent in that area.
I think too, we just sometimes want to ignore it. Like, if we don't know it, you think that may be it? Like, look, we're not going to go get any help, because if I know it, I've heard people say that I'd rather just not know. You just handle the finances, I'd rather, and then they fight all the time. Like, I can't believe it's you, it's me, it's you, it's me, it's you.
Yeah.
And
It's
so,
always the other person spending.
and so instead of learning, instead of knowing, let's fight. I don't understand that philosophy.
I don't either, but that's the way it is.
So, the whole thing with the budgeting and the effort and all that it takes to kind of get that mindset. I'm really glad we opened up that can of worms, because that leads me, it flows flawlessly right into this next one. And it's, let's say you have your budget, and let's say, it's taken you a while, it's taken you some months. Let's say that this person even went to someone like you and got that help, and they know they're doing it right. And now let's say it's been about a year, 2 years of budgeting, and you've got a little extra put up a little pocket, and you get ready to invest. When it comes to investing, there's different things you can do with it. Last episode, me and Brother Keith talked about it's always good to invest in something eternal, invest in something everlasting. So, always pumping it back into a ministry, that's always a good thing. But let's, just the core basics of investing your hard-earned money. What are some things that you need to be educated on, and what's some things you need to look out for? Because there's a lot of ways that can go wrong.
You're right. And I don't know if it's so much educated. I think if you're going to invest, and you ought to invest, especially when you're young. That's another thing I wish I'd learned in my life when I was younger. But I think one of the things you really ought to do is get a financial advisor. Get somebody that works in that field, like Edward Jones or somebody, and they charge fees, and that's why most people don't want to do it. I don't want to pay somebody a fee, but a lot of times paying that fee is going to be worth a whole lot more to you in the long run than making a bad investment. And that happens all the time. You have friends come up to you and say, "Oh man, I got this hot tip, and man, if you just invest in this," and you invest in it, and it turns out to be nothing more than some kind of pyramid scheme or some kind of thing, and you got hundreds or even thousands of dollars invested in it, and all of a sudden it crashes and you've lost all that money.
Yeah.
So I think getting a sound financial advisor is a wise investment in helping you invest.
Absolutely, and just to add on to that, nowadays they've made it easier than ever, really, to, if you wanted to go the stock market route. There's plenty of free apps you can put on your phone. I'm sure a lot of you watching this have probably seen commercials and Facebook ads and stuff for it. There's one I use called Robinhood. There's one called Acorns. I'm not sure where they're getting these names from, but anyways, what the Acorns app does, I don't personally use it, but I know that it'll take all the, you give it access to your bank account through a secure connection. The bank has, they see it and they have to approve it and all that, so it's safe there. But it takes all the loose change in your bank and it invests that for you. So let's say your bank account balance is $787.65. It's going to take that 65 and put it in the market, and then it builds up over time. With Robinhood, that one's a little more, you're kind of like your own broker. You pick your thing, and they've got financial advisors, of course, that work for them on staff, and they give you the pro tips on there. But even if you're going to go that route, I wanted to say you are still exactly right, because just because it's easy to do it, you can set it up on your phone and check it just like you would check the weather or an email or whatever. But folks, stocks, there's people that go to school a long time and work really hard just to understand that stuff at a high level.
And I think that, and some of those apps, I'm not familiar with those particular ones. I am familiar with a couple of them that might charge you $10 to make an investment, and put it wherever you want it. But unless you're willing to spend the time to investigate all those different stocks or whatever that you're trying to buy, you still run a high risk of making a bad investment if you're going to be your own stockbroker.
Yeah, and let me, you alluded to something about these pyramid schemes. Now they've got it decorated and camouflaged in so many things, from food to money to different types of monies, just different things that you can get. And I just say there's no shortcuts to success. Those schemes, the more people I get involved, I make money, and really it's the ones who start those things that make the money. and they make a presentation, they practice it, they memorize it, they got it down. They'll drive up in a car, they'll put clothes on it. Just you think these people are rolling in the dough, but no one I find in the world is making so much money and care so much about you that they just want to help you. I want you to make millions like I made. I mean, I've heard someone tell me, "You're my friend, and I couldn't make all this money, and knowing you're my friend and leave you out." That was a direct, I don't need to be involved.
You're right. There are no get-rich-quick schemes.
Agreed.
Well, no
Even if-
legal ones anyway.
Even if you go back to the gold rush in the 1840s, where a lot of people did get rich getting gold, they still had to go in there with a pickaxe and dig and swing and work.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you didn't have to, I mean, it was, as a time standpoint, you could get you a sack full of gold in 24 hours, but good luck walking after that. You know what I'm saying? So, all right, and finally, my last point as we're getting ready to wrap up here is everything we've said today is, I really think can help some people out there. Even if it's stuff you already knew and you're just getting a fresh take on it, especially from Brother Curtis over here, who, as we said earlier, you said you started, how many was in the original congregation? When
About 25 people.
2 checks and a scratch pad, and there you go. And now, if you've ever been to Heart of Worship, you'll see just how clean and impressive and all the great resources God's let us have. And somebody's got to manage that stuff. So there you go. But you said earlier, you said we as parents talking about teaching your kids that stuff at a young age. Well, I've noticed, and I don't know how it was a long time ago, but when I was in high school not that long ago, and from what I know now, none of that basic financial stuff is taught in the public school system. I, for one, I think we can all agree it needs to be taught in the public high school system, because not everybody plans on going to college. And so, when you go to college, you're still kind of like in a little bubble from the real world. You're about halfway in it because you still got that school environment. But if you're going straight in the workforce, I mean, you need to know these things, how to take care of your money, how to balance your checkbook, how to make your payments on time. So what do you think is an appropriate age or grade to start that? Because, let's be honest, if you try to teach that to a 7th grader, they're still years away from even being old enough to work. So, what do you think a good grade would be to get a program like that started at a public high school?
I definitely think by high school age, by
About
9th
ninth?
and 10th grade.
Yeah.
Back in my younger years of school, of course, I started out when they used to have the stone tablets and you had to take chisels and put your answers in. But when I was in high school, I don't know if they do this today. They used to have a class called home ec, where they took young ladies in, taught them how to cook
Yeah.
and do different things. But
There's a version of it now. Now it's a free elective, and they teach you how to cook and all that. I'm sure it's different at different schools, but, they don't really stress like the sewing part and all that, because, as you know, the world's changed a little bit. But, yeah, there's a version of that left. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
But I know nothing along the lines of budgeting was ever addressed or ever offered. And I look at some of the things today, and we're not going to get off on the new math thing, but I ain't never seen anything more crazy in my life than what they call new math. And I took classes in school. I took all my required classes, algebra, algebra 2, geometry, and depending on what field you go in life, most of that stuff is really useless. I'm just going to say it. There's a lot of things that I learned in geometry I've never used in my life. But budgeting would be something everybody is going to have to face at some point in time in their life.
And I believe that, like you said, high school's good, but think about it, if we could just take our kids and they get a job and we could just help them start breaking that down. The first thing is like, hey, what are you doing with God? Let's take that out. And then I always say this, and I said this before, pay God, but then I'd say pay yourself. Before you pay all your bills, what do you want to put up in savings? So pay yourself, and then pay all, of course if you have bills, you have to pay, but my point is, before we begin developing all those bills, let's pay God, let's pay ourselves, and then let's work with that, what we have left.
Yeah, and you know, if you go online, especially if you get Larry Burkett's, that's what I worked with the most. Savings is one of those essentials on there. And he even breaks it down into percentages. Based on your income, you should buy, and I don't remember what the percentages are exactly, so don't hold me to amount. It's got house. 6% of your income should go to your housing. And you know, it breaks down how much you should be putting in savings monthly, a percentage out of your pay. And again, going back to the very first question, that's where you get in a lot of trouble. It's because you've gone, when I've looked at some of those percentages and broke them down, I'm like, wow, I'm way over in this area or
Yeah.
whatever. And you sit down and budget somebody. I told somebody one time, and this is the truth, we sat down, and I said, the only way you're going to get out of this hole is you're going to have to sell your house and buy another house.
Yeah.
Did they
Can't-
do
You
it?
can't afford this house.
Did
No,
they-
they didn't.
Well, let's fight about it. I
you
want to
can't-
fight about it.
you
It's
can't
more
afford
fun
this
to
house.
fight.
You know?
Absolutely. Well, all of this information, I hope all of you watching this, I hope you got something out of it. About out of time for this week, but Brother Curtis, again, thank you so much for coming in and sharing some of that. Real quick, can you tell everybody watching, do you still offer those financial classes, or will you be offering them soon?
Well, it's not a class that I do. I do have a class that I have done before, but most of this is just helping individuals personally that would come in and say, hey, you know, I want to set up a budget. Can you help me?
Absolutely. Well, hey,
But
that's,
but let me just say this: he's willing to help. He might forget this part, but they got to do their part.
oh yeah.
So it's like if he sits down and he sets it up and he says, "Hey, you go and spend 2 or 3 months gathering this information," then they come back 2 or 3 months and go, "Oh, we hadn't got together yet on all the information, but what's the next step?" The next step is go back in 2 or 3 months and gather. And so I've gotten any more the same way about everything, is that we love people and we understand that we all need help, but you have to do the work. And if I care more about getting you help than you care about getting you help, it's probably not going to work.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is in the financial world.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not going to do the work for you. I'm not going to sit and go through your checks and your bank statements and decipher how much you spent on what. You're going to have to work to set up a
Yeah.
budget.
It's math, folks, not magic. So anyways, come by and see us one Sunday. You can find us on 28 East right here in Pineville. It's 2720 Highway 28 East. I'm Landon Wright. This is Pastor KD. Mr. Brother Curtis joining us for our very first special guest. This is How Table Talk. We'll see you next week, everybody.